Well, good evening and welcome to the Lower Makefield Township Ad Hoc Property Committee. My name is Dennis Stedman. I'll be serving as chair. Also on the call tonight, we have Fred Childs as vice chair, Bette Savante, who is the secretary. We have Sarah Dalbert, member, and our supervisor liaison, Fred Weiss. We have others that may be joining us, and there's James now. Hello, James.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. If we could, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And we have an agenda that I trust everyone has seen. I'll tend to want to be time efficient and roll through these things. Please don't let me roll over anything. Shout, stop, wave, interrupt. We need full participation. The first item that is an action item is approval of the August 5th minutes. Those were circulated to the committee members. Are there any comments, additions, edits, corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I'd ask for an approval.
I move they be adopted.
And a second.
Second.
Very good. All in favor of adopting the August 5 minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, very good. Minutes are adopted. Thank you. The second item, because just recently had a tour of all 16 of the buildings on the properties that for which we've been charged certain responsibilities and assignments. I wanted to just open up the floor to the other committee members to for any general or specific comments from that tour. I know we kind of compared notes standing in the yard towards the end, but rain was coming on. But having a chance to reflect, any comments, observations that would be pertinent at this juncture? Okay, hearing none. I know we all had some impressions, but we're going to dig into that as we get deeper into the meeting. I sent out to the committee, Fred, you haven't seen this, but I sent to the committee members yesterday a document that's a proposed process. We've been given an assignment by the Board of Supervisors that's rather large, and I thought in order for us to achieve the goals and the objectives that the supervisors set out for this committee, we need to create some process, to create some efficiency, to be sure we're targeted and moving forward. And what I'd like to do is share my screen and move to that process, and let's talk through that. This is a straw man I'm presenting to the committee that I want the committee to comment on, accept, reject, do as you need to. As we walk through this. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. You need to do a little tailoring with your images, please do so. So as I was saying, this is a proposed straw man. It's for discussion on a process that this committee may adopt to analyze these properties and move forward. The property committee charge were 5 items, and they're spelled out in the forming resolution. Identify and assess and analyze the township properties as directed by the Board of Supervisors. Identify potential uses and reuses of property. We're going to talk about that one a lot. Number 3, establish preservation or rehabilitation efforts needed consistent with those uses. conduct a financial review and analysis of the costs and potential revenue opportunities, including rent or sale of any given properties. And the fifth, to prioritize those to be addressed by the township. I think it's a pretty clear and logical flow of what this committee is charged to accomplish. So let's talk about how we might do so. The first charge is the suggested priorities, and the committee, the Board of Supervisors, gave the committee these 16 buildings that are spanning really two properties as the priorities for this committee. And so as the first item in that, I would ask the committee if we, as a committee of five, accept those as the rate 16. Are there any additions or subtractions or modifications to that list? Because I'd like to, put that behind us and move on to the more meatier subjects. Any conversation around these 16? Everyone feel like we have it right? Okay.
I agree.
Thank you, Fred. I do want to hear voices other than my own tonight. I'll be monotone all the while.
Dennis, hi, this is Sarah. I keep getting disconnected, so I apologize. I popped off and then I just popped back on. So just if I was signed up for something, just let me know, right?
Okay.
While I was.
All right. Yeah, we'll let you know if you volunteered while you were.
Yeah, if I get voluntold. Okay, thank you.
So this is a map or a picture of the 16 properties we're talking about. The 9 on the Patterson farmstead, 6 on the Satterswaith farmstead, and then the Slack House at Makefield Glen. These are all they're all old, relatively unused buildings. There's obvious exceptions like the Janney House, which the artists of Yardley are occupying. And we've toured all of these, and we know that they are in a variety of conditions and states. But these are the 16, and with that, I'd like to just put that behind us. We don't have to debate if there's any other properties to be included under the charge of this committee.
Hey, Dennis, unless you want the list of slides, if you hit the slideshow icon, it'll eliminate the.
I didn't know if I could do that in shared screen. I have mixed.
Okay.
What's with that?
I don't know. Okay.
So I tried to shrink down the borders as much as I can, but I've not had good luck on shared.
Okay.
Okay. So we're still on this page 4, right? You see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. I'm open to any ideas. This is a large and complex undertaking, to say the least. The second assignment, recommended uses. We know every one of these buildings are unique. They're old. They were built at a time with a very different kind of uses in mind. Uses associated with an active farm and an active family, and so. That we know is going to be difficult. The township have owned these buildings now. We're going on, I think, about 24, 25 years with no real solutions to date. So it's a bit of an amorphous assignment. It's going to take some work. It's not obvious or easy. The third is the required efforts. We know that these are old. We have old cost estimates that have been updated in a macro kind of way, not in a detailed way. So those estimates are of varying accuracy, and we know that those estimates represent very large dollars. And I mean, the conditions of the homes, I don't think those estimates are going down anytime soon. So the financial analysis is going to be critical, that be updated, that we have detailed engineering cost estimates, and importantly, identify, associated with the recommended uses, revenue opportunities, whether that's some tenant situation, some new utilization by the township, or a sale. But that's going to be difficult, and the prioritization of those is multifaceted. There's many buildings, there's many considerations, there's various stakeholders. The community will have varying priorities and ideas, and so I simply set this up to say it's a large and complex undertaking. So let's develop a process to be efficient and effective to increase our probability of success. We want to satisfy the board of directors in their assignment and deliver to them some sound recommendations that can be implemented. In order to develop a process, it seems to me we need to know a few things. Number one, what threatens the buildings, so we can take the necessary steps to prevent those threats. Two, what steps are needed to go from the current situation to the desired. Here I did what many people call desk research, which is stealing other people's ideas. And I looked through the internet and through various sources. We're not unique in addressing these kinds of issues. There's a lot of expertise and resources out there. So I think we should do our best to tap them, and we need to continue to tap them. And we'll talk at the end of the meeting. We have an additional expert coming at our next meeting that fits that definition of tapping into existing expertise. So what are the most common threats to historic buildings? First and foremost is disrepair, which is very applicable to the 16 properties that we've been assigned. It's gradual neglect. And that's not to say the township hasn't been spending money and doing their best to maintain these buildings, but any building that's empty and really doesn't have a use is going to naturally deteriorate, and it's not going to be cared for as if it is used. Prime example being the Jenny House, where Bet's, the organization that Bet runs, the Artists of Yardley, use that facility routinely, and they have, through blood, sweat, and tears and fundraising, fixed up some things, maintained some things, improved some things. Eagle Scout projects that put in pavers, and so a building that's used you can maintain. If it's not used, disrepair is the enemy. It's unused historic buildings sold as part of a larger tract of land. The land is valued and used, but the building remains without purpose. That describes the Patterson Farm pretty much to the T. The property was purchased in the late 90s. There is a use for the property. It's being leased to Charland Farms for agriculture. There's the leaf mulch project goes on there. The land has a use. The buildings, by and large, do not. And as someone who grew up on a farm and has an old farm in our family, you can preserve farmland, but preserving a farm is completely different. Farm is buildings and activity, and it's hard to preserve a farm. Farmland is much easier. The other things that the expert lists as threats: developers' plans. I think the LMT actions have prevented that. Much of the property is preserved, and so we don't have an issue of development pressure in this case, or community infrastructure and growth. There's no plans of highways and things going through there because of the land's been preserved. So I think the township actions have presented those two. And of course, there's always weather. And it's not been an issue to date beyond the general elements that destroy these buildings gradually. But we haven't been victims of floods, tornadoes, and the rest. But who knows what's coming.
Dennis, if I might just, one question on the developer's plans. I think there was some comment that Kurt in particular mentioned in previous meetings of looking at possibility of either zoning changes or reuse of, in particular, I think the Satterthwaite home building, since that was zoned separately for possible use. So I understand what you're saying, that it's, the property as a whole, Patterson Farm as a whole, has been hopefully preserved for long-term future, but there could be other development within the limited areas that aren't under the agricultural easement.
You're absolutely right, Fred. And and the township is, as stated, if there is a use or a purpose or a new use for these buildings that would require some zoning changes, they're willing to do that. But we're not looking at a circumstance where we have 130 acres with a great old historical house and Toll Brothers is coming in to develop that and want to tear down that house. That was really the context of it. But you're right. There are some gray shades there. I agree. It may not be fair to cross that out completely. So from what I can put together, the structure that I have seen recommended is basically these 4 steps in trying to restore and preserve historical buildings, find new uses. One, the first step in every source I looked at was determine the significance of the building. What is the significance? Is it a historical landmark? Was a document signed there? Was there a historical event? Or was it owned by a prominent local or national figure? Is it a unique architectural icon? The first step in everything I read was determine the significance. What's the story behind the building? What makes it special? What makes it worth the extraordinary effort, because it will be extraordinary effort, both time and money, to work to preserve it. Because in order to preserve it, you're going to have to motivate people. That significance needs to be brought to the surface first and foremost, because that drives a lot of the rest. Second is plan a new purpose. What might it be? And we'll walk through these. The third, find partners. No one group ever does this alone. And the fourth piece is then secure funding. And I thought if we can think about the tasks that we have, the broad tasks, and break them into these kind of 4 component parts, it might allow us to begin to eat the elephant one bite at a time. So, and my statement here is this is going to take time, and an important first step, at minimum, is to stabilize the buildings, to halt the deterioration, which can occur at an exponential pace once you get to a certain tipping point, whether it's animals or elements or rodents or molds. So because we know this process is going to take time, we do need to take some steps, in my opinion, and this is for the committee to conclude, that we prioritize those buildings that we believe right off the top are likely to be preserved versus some of those which we know are much lower on the priority list. And if they're likely to be preserved, there's some steps that should be taken to stabilize them. Because if this is, a couple of years go by and they may not be savable anymore. So when we look at this process, I see many pages on a calendar. It's not happening quickly, which means there are some steps that should be taken because the enemy is out there, the enemy being weather and woodchucks and insects and tree roots working against us in saving these buildings. So the first, and Bet, you've provided more information on this subject than anyone else thus far with the PowerPoint that you shared, that you put together some years ago on the Janney house and the Patterson farm. But determining the building significance is that first step. And I'd like the committee to just comment a little bit on some of your thoughts regarding this important first step as we understand it today. And hopefully we'll learn more tomorrow.
I'm not sure everybody saw the PowerPoint. I shared it with everybody, but it was, I jumped onto Ancestry at some point just several years ago and did a genealogy tour of the Janney family, and tried to find out, who sold what to whom along the way. So that was it. I mean, we have that history. Does it fall within a historic landmark? Or I don't think so, or a cultural significance? It's culturally significant for Lower Makefield because it was, it's still standing, and it was one of the ones, that go all the way back to William Penn. Architecturally, the structure of the Janney house from 1837 edition has been documented, I think, by Helen Hines, about the way the corner joints are faceted and that sort of stuff. So is that an icon? I don't know, but the architecture was documented.
In the Satterswaith house, that I know there's a nonprofit group in the township to save that house. I haven't tried to make any attempt to reach out and learn more about that history, either that family or the Doan family. That house, was built and used as a duplex. It's pretty pieced up, divided in half. So, I think there's a lot of history to uncover there to try to figure out what the significance of that building is. Certainly its prominence on Mirror Lake Road and its visibility makes it significant to the community today, but its historical significance, I don't know. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And maybe it's been done and this committee doesn't know it yet.
That's possible.
I think that was.
What was the name of the group, Dennis? You said that there's a group out there?
It's the, I think I'll get it right. Let's see, Preservation of Patterson Farm.
Save Patterson Farm or something like that.
Patterson Farm Preservation Group.
Yes. And if you go to that website, you'll see some information, and I'm confident we'll make some connections there in this process. They may have information and resources that we don't.
I think Dennis, I think it would be useful to have someone, I know James is on the Historic Commission, I believe, but someone from that group maybe James himself can provide that information, or Helen or someone else, and then a representative of the Preserve Patterson group to get their perspective and what their priorities and ideas are for the properties.
I can absolutely reach out to Helen, and we can see if we can bring her.
And James,
That's my idea, suggestion anyway.
and James, the historical committee, have they studied these properties already, or what can you comment on that they may be able to provide more or less off the shelf at this point, if anything?
Sure. So while I was there, we haven't really discussed these particular properties beyond just appointing a representative. But I'm sure that the chair, Helen Heinz, who has years of experience with this kind of stuff, she would know much more about the history than anyone else that I can think of. So can definitely reach out to her.
And I think Bet's presentation was helpful because it clearly showed the connection back to William Penn himself with some of the individuals, the original owners and the original land grants that this dates back to. So that certainly has some historic significance. I'm not sure, how many other farm buildings there may be in the region or in the state or throughout the the East Coast even, that date back that far. But I mean, as far as a farm itself, I'm not sure how much of that provides a cultural significance, other than that it's been continually farmed, presumably since then, since colonial days.
Right. Yeah, and I know there are organizations in Pennsylvania dedicated to preserving barns and that type of thing. So those are the kinds of organizations that perhaps we can tap into to put, for example, some of those farm buildings in that historical context. As you say, Fred, I'm not sure how unique or how common or frequent they are. Maybe they're very rare. They're certainly getting more rare. But I do. This item is placed up front because in order to raise awareness, applying for grants, funding, raising charitable contributions, whatever we might need, we need to understand this. The buildings. I see this as a critical first step. Not that every step is done chronologically, but it really is kind of front loaded on this topic. The second step then would be planning new uses for the buildings. And according to sources I was reading, this is the most important step in the process, because without a use, a building is going to die, as this author said. Without a purpose, a building dies. You can't just maintain a building and have it empty. It's going to deteriorate. So there has to be a purpose. Just saving it from demolition doesn't get it done. So this is the toughest assignment in my estimation of this committee, because without this vision, they're going to die a slow death, which is what's been going on. Without a use, they're going to collapse. So we have to identify those things. Whether it's residential, it's retail, it's apartments, museums, nonprofit headquarters, visitors head center, whatever. We need to come up with that. And in some cases, it may be a sale to a private individual who agrees that they will restore it because it's important to them and they want to live in it. I don't know. I mean, in my way of thinking, everything's on the table. But we can't, and I think as the Board of Supervisors understood when they created this committee, we can't propose spending money to preserve anything until and unless we have a use for it.
Continued.
Without that use, we're pouring money down a rat hole, or in this case, maybe a woodchuck hole. So I think they were wise to give the committee this charge without a doubt. The third step, as I read about this, and again, I'm open. It's find partners. We got to get other organizations, people, groups that have similar interests, joint interests, to come along. There's a number of historical groups. Like I say, there's a Pennsylvania, the Historical Barn and Farm Foundation of Pennsylvania. I mean, we need to tap into these kinds of organizations, and not only for their expertise, but maybe for funding, maybe for grants, community organizations, appeal to, if we have proposals that make sense for the community, our business community may want to weigh in. County resources, state resources. This is all part of what we need to what we need to do, and it clearly needs to be started now, finding these partners, because we're gonna need them at some point, and we can't just show up at the last minute. We've got to cultivate those relationships and bring people along on the mission, and let some of those people bring us along on a mission. I mean, there's no. I think that it's a common goal. It's not a self-centered goal. And then the final is to secure the funding. We know all of these, most of these expenses, buildings in aggregate are going to be expensive. We already have some of those estimates. And I'm making the very safe assumption that this can't be funded, whatever we come up with, can't be funded by taxpayers alone. If that were the case, Lower Makefield would have done it by now, and the Board of Supervisors don't need this committee. That's not saying that the taxpayers won't contribute or be involved, but they won't be alone. So.
Are you saying, Dennis, then that you don't think the township is committed to those cost estimates?
I saw those estimates as cost estimates, what it would cost to do it. It wasn't any commitment to do it. It was an investigation to determine what would it cost should we decide to renovate these buildings. It wasn't a decision to renovate them. And like I say, I can't speak for the township, but I can speak as a taxpayer. I think to say, I don't think the kinds of budgets, the kind of numbers that we're looking at is something the township's just going to say, okay, that's a great idea. Let's put that in our 2023 budget. I think the township is clearly committed based on the fact that they own the properties and they've been, there's a budget to maintain them to date, and they formed this committee. And I'm sure it will cost, it'll be township funding in part, but that means there's another part. Again, it's, we can take it to the supervisors, but Fred, you have any comments on this subject?
Yeah, well, the reason why we have this committee is once we figured out what our priorities are, then how we allocate our resources will follow. So if it's decided that, just for argument's sake, that the Satisway House is the #1 priority, we will, we will deal with our resources. We've been in contact with a state nonprofit organization dealing with preservation of historic and significant properties, and they've offered their help already in serving as a resource for grants and other funding. So, the township, of course, depending on community input, your committee's input, and the feeling of my fellow supervisors will determine where those resources go. But I think as far as the present board, we have a commitment to go forward and seeing that all these properties are taken care of. We just depending on how the committee ends up with their final report.
Fred, is there anything earmarked now in the current budget for this year or in the early development of next year's budget that are earmarked specifically for maintenance of any of these structures, or is it just under the general routine maintenance budget?
As far as I know, there's nothing specifically dedicated to any of these buildings. Right now, that's part of the Public Works budget to maintain these structures. And, we can all see that for the last umpteen years, we've been, we've reacted to issues. So if a door falls off or a window breaks, we deal with it. But right now, there is no plan to do anything other than to keep things from getting it a lot worse.
Fred, I'm not familiar with the budgeting process. Wouldn't the budget for next year already be finalized, or is that?
No. The preliminary budget will be brought to the township in the beginning of November, and usually by mid-December, it's approved.
Okay, so if there is anything that would come up, it's that November timeframe would be our cutoff.
Well, because of the amount of money it would take to renovate these structures, we all know that this is going to be 7 figures. So it's not that I don't think the 2022 budget will specifically address these buildings. However, that doesn't mean there'll be a commitment. Right now, there's no real money available from the township, but we all know the elephant in the room will be the final disposition of the sewer system. And I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but there will be, when the dust settles, there'll be significant funds available for a lot of different possible things. So, including matches for grants to do what we want to do with these structures. So it's hard.
Can I ask you guys a question? In the litany of documents that we got, did we get something called the Patterson Farm Strategic Vision from 2007? I'll put it up if you can see it. I'm not sure you can see that. Did we get that? Because in that was done by the Heritage Conservancy. And it gives, a great deal of outlines in terms of evaluation of issues and buildings and talking about end uses for the Satterthwaite property especially. So I had it on file at AOI, so that's in my files. And I was just going through pardon me if I was rustling papers in your ear, but part of the stuff I had gotten from Helen Hines a long time ago talked about the Bailey Satterthwaite property. I'll scan that history as you had the Patterson or Janney House piece too, so that you have that. And then I don't think the township would have given us the article on preserving Patterson Farm, which was written by Donna Doan several years ago. So I'll scan all those and I'll share them with you so you have some community perspective.
That final report is on the Google
Okay.
Doc. Yes.
Okay, because when you get into that one, then on thank you, Fred. You know, it talks a lot about their vision at the time, that was back in 2007, about things like a living history museum on the Satterthwaite property, those kinds of things. And it was, you know, it was ideas. It was aspirational. I don't think they ever costed it out or who would run it or things like that. But it gives you another idea as to what might happen.
And Fred, the strategic plan that Bet is referring to from 2007, that is on the shared drive?
Yes, it's 23 pages.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll reference that. Thank you. So again, I think, and to the issue of the budget for 22, that where there could be some impacts is because this process is going to take time again. I think there's some few inexpensive, not major, but important first steps to stabilize or halt the deterioration that could be taken now. And a few of those right off the top, there's at least four buildings, maybe five, where we need more aggressive woodchuck control, as well as some more permanent steps to be taken to control the woodchucks. These are not expensive.
You put a picture of a woodchuck in too.
There's a picture of a woodchuck. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck?
Don't go there.
So, I mean, for example, speaking to the animal control agent who is doing the trapping out there now, you know, I mean, she's caught a lot of woodchucks and everything else, but it's a never-ending battle. There are some relatively expensive steps that could be taken that would be closer to a permanent solution. You know, you drive rebar stakes 4 inches apart all around the perimeter of the building, and they won't go in from the outside. They only have to be down a foot or so. There's some kind of practical things we could do to stabilize them. There's, for example, the garage to the Janney house, it's called the tenant garage, has got some bushes and trees growing right up against the side of it, shading the roof all the time, holding moisture there, promoting rot and deterioration. A crew could go out there and just clear the brush away from the side of the house. So I think as a committee, we could have a list of those kinds of just short-term practical steps that could be done without, you know, without 6 figures, certainly, perhaps could be built into the 22 budget or may already fit. I'm not sure what Greg's, you know, allocation is, but so I think there's some things like that we could recommend in the near term. And I'd ask that the committee have a session to review and finalize that.
So Dennis, I think you're talking short-term and long-term. Like there's some short-term fixes that probably might fall under not the township budget, but the works budget. I forget what that was called, the other one.
Yeah.
It might fall under them, but we could give some or maybe, I don't know how the budgeting would work. And then there's really the long-term thing that we know is the financial piece that we would have to secure funding for, and make sure there's some ROI on, and that it's effective use of funds, right? Like we're not just throwing money at it to watch it deteriorate for 10 more,
Right. If we don't stabilize the foundation on those barns, for example, there won't be barns by the time we figure out what to do with them.
Well, yeah, so maybe there's like the short-term recommendations that we have to give to kind of to stop the bleeding, excuse the phrase. And then we have maybe the long-term, what we think would be used for the building, but it can't be done in a year. So it's something that if you need to react now and then to short and long-term.
And I also think that, like, you know, having looked through this final report that they've also put in there, that Beth was talking about, that having that kind of short-term recommendation will also allow us to pass on the more nitty-gritty considerations of, you know, well, if we do something like a living history museum, or if we recommend something like that, like a living history museum with the property, how does that work? How does that happen? How does that all get set up? Having this kind of, this stopping the bleeding is what Sarah called it.
Sorry.
Having that in place gives time to be able to put these other plans in motion and figure it out. Because that we can't do all of that. You know, we within a year's time frame, we can't put an entire business together or something. But I think acknowledging that and divvying up those recommendations, because I don't think this past report did that, especially with the short-term recommendations.
You mean the report that went through all the cost options?
No, the final report that that was talking about.
2007.
Yes.
Yeah, it only went so far.
I thought that was recommendations for use of the buildings, right?
It basically focuses in on a living history thing like Howell Farm.
Oh, you guys are talking long-term. I'm sorry, James. I thought you were
That's
talking
long-term.
about short-term. I thought that was a hit list. I was like,
Yeah.
where's that? I didn't see that.
No.
Okay.
They didn't really address the
Implementation.
yeah, they
Cost.
said township should take immediate action to ensure the preservation of the buildings.
Yeah.
But I think we could be a bit more in depth with
Yeah.
what that would look like.
The recommendation on the 16 properties with the pictures and the cost estimates also included demolition for safety's sake of the, I'm not going to remember what it was called.
The shed, I think.
The shed on the Satterthwaite side
Yeah.
that's leaning, that you don't want people to deal with. So that's also a short-term kind of consideration.
Exactly.
Yeah, one shed and one corn crib, I think, were slated. I mean,
Yep.
what we're really, hang on. I think what the 2007 really referred to as this, wait, that's not where I want to be.
No, I think you're right.
Identify potential uses of the property, you know, in terms of this charge that we have.
Right.
But not
Didn't do the rest.
through what efforts are needed, what budgets are needed, what's the revenue opportunity, so they were kind of lofty here at this kind of level, if that makes sense. Which is great and useful. It's important, but I think the Board of Supervisors is looking for us to make it a more implementable plan, not just the strategic plan.
Right.
If that makes sense. Is that right, Fred? Are we thinking about this correctly?
Exactly.
Fred, just to clarify, the board, would it be appropriate for us to give short-term, you know, immediate things to do and then a long-term, or is the board, are they only really interested in a long-term return on investment implementation and the maintenance of it and keeping it all stable over the next year or so should not be in our scope? I just want to make sure that we said it is, but I don't know if I want to make sure we're correct in that assumption.
Your scope is to do exactly what you think is best for these buildings. So if you strongly feel that we need to do something in the short term to shore up the structure so they don't collapse, it is your obligation to advise the township to do so. You know,
Okay.
we are depending on you to guide us to make the right decisions. That's the best I can come up with at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Fred. That's helpful to hear from you. Okay, let's get back. So I'm suggesting if we develop this process, it's basically these four major steps, a lot of micro steps within each one. But as a committee, perhaps we organize ourselves around these elements and form some subcommittees. I don't think we should all be focused on trying to determine the building's significance or everybody focused on finding partners. Not that everyone couldn't, but it seems it would help if we had committee members to lead the charge in these specific specializations, if you will, or areas. And on that point, Fred, I think a message for you to carry back to the supervisors is the resolution to form this committee called for 7 members. Right now we have 5. I think we have quite a bit of work to do, and I think additional members that are engaged and productive be most welcome. So I think we could use more members on this committee, please.
We'll be interviewing somebody on Tuesday at our next meeting. So that'll bring us up to 6 members, and hopefully we'll have an additional member shortly thereafter to help out.
Okay, great.
Can I ask a quick question? So I think at one of our previous meetings before Sarah was interviewed, we also found out about an interview being scheduled again. Is there any way that we can be notified if an interview is, or like when an interview is scheduled with the Board of Supervisors?
The interviews are public meetings and are usually scheduled at 7:15 before the 7:30 the 7:30 business meeting starts. So if there is, there will be one at this Tuesday. The meeting's been shifted a day early because of the holiday. And, so you're welcome to it'll be broadcast through Zoom, just like this meeting. And I would invite you, if you want to participate after the supervisors are finished asking questions, you call in just like you would a public comment at a Board of Supervisors meeting, and you can ask questions as well of the individual if you so desire. That'll be fine.
Great. I also was wondering whether or not we can be notified when it's like put on the calendar, just so that we can have an idea of how much we need to catch people up, what, when we might want to schedule like a site walk to get them on board, that kind of thing. Because I think we all think it's very necessary to be able to see these properties in person before, we go through the whole process of figuring out what we want to do with them.
Well, the committee is usually notified right after the vote. So right after the appointment of the individual to the committee, Katie will send the chair, Dennis, an email, and I'm not sure if she copies the rest of the committee on that email, but as soon as Dennis gets the official word that the new member has been appointed, he can work with the township and of course copy you. So if you want to do another site visit with the new member to add color and context to what you've experienced already, I'm sure that can be taken care of.
Right, thank you.
And if there's anything that you want me to bring to the board, funnel it through Dennis, and Dennis can send it to me, and I'll be happy to report that at the next meeting.
Okay. So, first of all, does the committee agree that perhaps we can divide this task up in these 4 steps that are being proposed here? Someone to lead the charge on the significance of the building. I quite frankly, I think everybody's involved in the new purpose. Everyone's involved in everything, but you need some, subcommittee chairs perhaps to lead, the partnering subcommittee or the funding subcommittee.
It's tough to jump to funding when we don't know purpose.
I know. The significance and purpose are, to me, the most critical right now. And once we begin to get a handle on those, we can begin to reach out in the partnering.
Yeah, I say it a little bit more stepwise, but the first 2
Yeah.
are very important. I agree.
Okay. I know some, and some people are naturally better at finding partners and fundraising than others. That type of thing, it just fits different people differently. Is this a way for us to organize ourselves to take on these 4 steps? Not necessarily all at once, but.
Yeah, I think the only thing it doesn't address that we talked about is that short and long term. So like in here, so is it potentially, do we think we would have an overall purpose for these buildings before, would we need the overall new purpose for the building before we could recommend short-term fixes on the building? Or no? I don't know, because you don't want to make a short-term fix that's going to preclude you from a long-term or have been a wasted effort. But I mean, I think getting rid of woodchucks doesn't really need to be, I think that's just a thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we need to over strategize that.
I see I see this element here as the short term. This first step of stabilization.
So that's not in one of the 4 steps. Is that like,
No,
is that like 0?
It's not. It's
Okay.
It's just, these are things that ought to be done. If this was your property, if you
Right.
owned it, what would you want done right away? So that you do have a long term to look forward to. Because if you don't do some stabilization right away, there may not be a long term. And my way of thinking, it would be to prevent that deterioration and spend small dollars on some of these properties, but only those properties that we deem most likely to be saved or restored. I mean, an example, the packing house doesn't excite me at all. It's not in bad condition. It doesn't need any particular saving. It's not really historical. It's a concrete block, 1940s cement floor building. I wouldn't take any extraordinary effort on that type of building. But the 2 barns, which are, classic Pennsylvania bank barns of, true history, those we don't want falling down, or either house, right? So if we have as a committee can say, all right, here are buildings that were, even before we do any analysis, these are high on our list to save, and they need some short-term steps. Let's propose the short-term steps. There could be some buildings that are kind of on the bubble that we're not sure what we're going to do with. We're not even going to think about the short term on them yet because they may not have a long run. So why worry about the short run? I guess that's what I'm thinking at this stage. Does that make sense?
Yes. Do you want to venture off process and actually talk about which buildings we're talking about?
I do.
Okay. I'm ready. Everybody else ready? You want to finish your presentation, Dennis?
So Dennis, so we're thinking for the proposed process, we're going to do 1 and 2, and then first step. Is that the 3 things we would need to, between the 5 of us staff, into subgroups? Was that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the first step needs subgroups. I think we've all toured the buildings. I'd have a particular list of priorities.
You mean the first step one, the short term? Or you
Yeah.
mean the determine the building significance?
No, the short term. I mean, Bet, you said you were ready. Go for it. I mean, what's on your short-term list where there's some stabilization needed?
Both barns need to, if we use the rebar treatment that you said around the external of the foundations, make sure those are shored up. And then I think I pointed out in not the tenant garage, but the other garage over on the Patterson side, that a previous public works person had filled it with, it was equally rutted like a lot of the barns were from groundhogs, and that somebody just came in with crushed stone and filled that in, and we haven't had any other problems. So if that's a fix, if that gives it sufficient, support for those internal supports inside the barns to be shored up, P5.
Yeah, I think
The left-hand bit, the bays were filled with ground stone. But if you go to P9 and you go to S5, which is the barn, those 2 barns those would be classic candidates for making sure those foundations are stabilized. Township's already put a lot of money into Satterthwaite property barn, and the internal structure of the Patterson barn needs to shore it up. Are we in agreement? Anybody? I don't know. I'm saying crushed stone, but if there's another option to shore up the inside that Public Works comes up with the engineers, I'm amenable to that.
Well, I think in this S5, the Patterson barn, I think if the rebar is put around the perimeter and the chucks on the wood on the inside are trapped, and then there's some a very low amount of carpentry repair to prevent woodchucks from getting inside, because there's holes in the bottom of some doors and things like that.
Okay.
Secure the perimeter and free the inside. I think that's a step in the right direction on that barn. On P9, the main barn here at Patterson, I said Patterson before. There, the rebar is not going to necessarily be a solution, because you have whole open areas of that barn that you can't close off. And the whole idea of the rebar is to wall off the barn foundation. We'll have to come up with maybe a different solution there. Maybe it's the gravel, maybe it's something else. But I think we can work with Jamie, the animal control agent in the township, to work up some estimates and some plans of what could or should be done. There was also pretty bad woodchuck problems in, I think it was it was both S2 in this map.
S2, yeah, because the whole concrete had lifted up because they were coming in the end.
Yeah, there was S2, and there was also P1, the well house there at Janney.
Right.
Was getting disrupted because there's one half of that's a wooden floor. I mean, was wood.
Right.
And then P4 is what is labeled as the tenant garage. That's the one that is rotting because of the trees and bushes growing up against it. And there could be some of that at P5. I just don't remember.
Was there also a structural issue with the wood in P7? I thought that there were some pieces that maybe didn't look very sturdy or haphazard in the
In the
I think holding up the second floor. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the rafters were made out of round cut logs, so they weren't straight. But I don't remember a foundation issue there. I'd have to look at that again to be sure. We know this corn crib here, P6, that kind of is what it is at this point. I mean, you know, there's skunks and possums under there and things, and that's just kind of a never-ending battle. We know S4 it was slated for demolition some time ago, and it's past a point of no return in my estimation. And I think it was S3 that when someone referenced maybe a building needs to come down for safety reasons, that was the building that had some leaning foundations and leaning pillars and things.
Yeah, that was the one, if any of them, that if you take it down to try to recover some of the woods and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
If I could suggest maybe a way to look at this other than the total list is to pare down the core group that we feel have the most potential, which is most of them. And then there's the P8 and S6 that are much more recent. And like you say, concrete block, they're in fairly decent shape, so that they could be a lesser priority. And then the demolition possibilities, S4 definitely, and possibly S3 as the third group, so that we're not necessarily looking at all 16, and we kind of at least start out with a core group of maybe 12 or so that have the most potential and are the least likely to fall over at this point, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're right, Fred. That it does boil down to the two more modern ones that really don't need any urgent attention. There's two that are clearly, need to be torn down. And then there's 12 that, we have to figure out what to do with. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, at least to start as a, focus on those, and then we can prioritize what needs the most immediate, like the barns and so on, the most immediate short-term fixes, and then move on from that to the other buildings. I think the three houses that are involved are the key properties that, long-term are the ones that we really need to focus on.
Unless there's anything anybody saw on S1, Satterthwaite, the main house, that needs immediate shoring up.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is definitely part of that, but I think.
You want to wait on that? I mean, short term.
Yeah, I'm not sure what offhand, but the key there, I think, is the environmental issue. There was a report, and so there's significant lead paint, and that even involves the exterior, the soil in the area around the building. So, before there's any serious work, and I'm not sure whether any of that has to be done first before you can even do stabilization there, if it's needed.
Okay, so we'll set that one aside for now.
I don't see anything at S1, or nothing comes to mind that needed an immediate attention to stabilize it. I mean, obviously there's a lot of attention needed there, but not in a stabilization mode that I recall. Now, Fred, you said, so you referenced three houses, and I like that thought. There's actually four, right? There's the two main.
Right. Well, the carriage house as well, right? Right.
Yeah, the carriage house and the slack house. So out of the 12 that we've talked about, 4 of them are homes or houses. And there was one item at the slack house that is potentially an immediate stabilization item, and that is up on the 3rd floor at the chimney towards the country club. I'm not sure my orientation there. There was damage to the roof and clearly some damage coming down the brick, and plaster was falling and things. I'd like I think I would put that on the list for potential short term. I mean, maybe if Greg or Jim looks at that, they might determine that it's not significant, but I think there's water getting in up there, and that would be something, even a quick patch might be important on this short term, stabilization list.
So as secretary, let me run through what I've got. I've got S5, which is the barn at Satterthwaite, to secure the perimeter with rebar and do some carpentry to close off holes to prevent access by animals. Did you talk about the dirt floor in that at all? No? Or is it rutted?
Oh, the floor is full of woodchuck holes, but if they're inactive, I don't think we want to, propose going to the expense of trying to smooth out the floor or fill the holes or anything until we know the uses. I mean, that's not a stabilization
Okay,
issue.
it wasn't threatening any of the support beams and support structures.
I mean, I'm not an engineer, but that wasn't my sense.
Anybody notice? Okay, so that's what we got. Secure the perimeter with rebar and do carpentry to close off access by animals. We've got P9, which is a Patterson Barn. Dennis, you said the rebar won't work because there's too many open access points there. Do you want to make a recommendation that be stabilized? I think those ruts are undermining the interior.
I mean, I would certainly recommend that we stabilize that vis-a-vis woodchuck control. I just don't know what method would be best, because I don't think the rebar is not a method. So maybe it's gravel, maybe it's just more aggressive trapping.
No, I'm talking about the holes. I think one of the reports said that the stone holding up the wood beams that are going up were being undermined by the holes, so that would have to be reinforced or filled in or something. Yes? No?
That's more in-depth engineering than.
Yeah, we'll leave it to the engineers, but it has to be reinforced. I have S2 and P1 with a lot of groundhog damage. Whether or not we do anything with that right away, I don't know, but that's what we mentioned. P4 is rotting because of vegetation. That's the tenant garage. Honestly, I could get volunteers in to clear that out. That wouldn't be a problem. And P6 is okay. The corn crib on Patterson would be a low priority. S4 and maybe S3 are slated for demolition for safety reasons, and the slack house to have an immediate look-see at the 3rd floor by the chimney to prevent any future water damage that may be happening. We got? Or those are our immediate concerns. Anybody else have anything else?
Well, P5, I think you can see from the aerial there that there's some pretty large trees, or
yeah, they
I'm not sure if that's
couple years ago when they did the gravel in the interior, they sandblasted and painted the exterior, so I don't think there's any vegetation immediately abutting it, except maybe a hydrangea bush, but I don't think it's right up. It's not like P4, which is overarching.
But is that something that you need more than just some volunteers to cut some shrubs?
Got some shrubs. No, I don't think so. I think there's air between that tree that you see in the picture and the building itself, but I'll look.
Okay.
P7, was there P7 issue? You wanted to look at something. We don't think there's a foundation issue there. We don't think that's a big priority at the moment. Not as much as the other ones that need immediate stabilization.
Yeah, I don't recall the issues being that severe there, and I don't see that building as being that prioritized either. So may not be the best allocation of resources. I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll put P6 and P7 together as a low priority for at least for immediate stabilization.
Right. Right.
So that would be our list. What do we do with it? Do we have to do a formal letter, Mr. Weiss, or write this up for you to present? What would you like us to do with this?
Well, if you have consensus on what your immediate needs are, you would make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors whatever you want. And then
Okay,
I would bring that recommendation forward to the board. And if
Oh, sorry. The one thing I wanted to see with this was with S3 and S4, is that demolition already set, or are we recommending that? Because I just want to ensure that there's no, like, I think any sort of like demolition is something that is going to raise eyebrows from someone, whether it be Patterson, that
preservation group.
preservation groups, or any sort of historical stakeholders. So I just want to clarify, is that a recommendation, or is it something that is already in the works?
I don't think we want to do that at this time. I think S4 was, it's been suggested from the beginning, from the township, that should be demolished. But I don't know that we need at this point to either agree with that or recommend one way or the other with either of those.
Yeah, I think the only way it's something we would put on that short-term hit list is if we think it's like a safety issue, or if there's something, but I think in our long-term recommendations, it's going to be, we wouldn't invest in this property. We would not invest money in this. There is no return. There is no proposed use for it. And just put that on there, and then, it can be addressed as needed from there. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, unless, is there a way that we know if I know it's already been surveyed by other folks and said it, I know the S4 in particular when we discussed it, but
Yeah.
Is there any safety issues? Is this imminent that like in the next snowstorm it's down, or do we know?
I don't think it's quite that imminent,
Okay. I know.
that it's going to fall
I don't
down,
think
but
it's there.
it is leaning, and it is, I think Greg Hucklebridge said that he was concerned about it as a safety issue because it was tilting. So,
All right, so it's either on the short term and the long term, and I guess we can figure out which one we want.
well, we're not
on,
going to
but-
invest in it because
Correct. It's definitely on not to do anything, but we just don't know if it has to be on the short term, do immediately, or if it's just when we give the list of longer term recommendations is that when we mention it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with James that I don't see any, unless, there is a real safety issue. I don't see any profit in proposing that those two buildings be demolished. I think it's important for us as a committee to recognize that those two are likely going to be demolished someday, and they're at the bottom of the priority list on anything we're doing. And then I think it's up to Greg if he thinks S3 is he's going to recommend tearing it down sooner than later. I don't see that in our as part of our short-term recommendations, because it will it's not getting off on the right foot. That's for sure.
It's S, I know it's S4, but is it S3 as well? Is that what
We
you
said maybe S3 because it had a lot of structural issues also.
The foundation on this map on the left side was leaning, and there was a couple of the support beams leaning the opposite way. It was,
Got it.
it's pretty much a mess. But
Yeah, I think that the S4 is
There are
probably
people there
easier
with
to justify because there isn't, I mean, historically speaking, I think it's the most recent building, isn't it?
S6 is probably the youngest building on the property, that concrete garage in the back there.
Oh, yeah, I don't even count that one because that's already got a use. So that's like off my mental. Okay, yeah, that one.
Yeah, but you're
So-
right. S3, half of it is concrete. There's one wall that was added more recently that's concrete. That's broken up, but the older foundation is in horrible condition. So I think we just know that they're at the bottom of the priority list and at this juncture.
So when I read things off, I said S4 was slated for demolition and maybe S3. You want me to just take S3 off altogether and say, put that up with the low priority stuff?
I would just list them both as likely demolition in the future.
Okay.
But
I
we're,
think, Betty, you're saying, do we need more discussion on S3 before we determine that?
yeah, we don't.
Well, I think we're trying to
Well-
say, we're not going to recommend demolition, but if Greg determines that it's a safety issue, then okay.
So be it.
So be it.
Yeah, let the township make that determination.
Who said you guys weren't politicians?
I'm getting confused on S3. Is S3 the one that had the well when you walked right in that you could walk downstairs on?
That was S2. that had that-
Oh, okay. So I have the wrong. All right, I got to move to the left. Okay.
Basement, yeah.
S2 is like the
I
little
didn't think
workshop,
that was in that better shape.
the workshop with the trap door when you first walked in that went down. Do you remember that
That's
one?
S2, right?
That big spider?
The old wooden trap door to the
Yeah,
basement.
yeah, that one.
That's S2.
Oh. The descriptors we use for the buildings.
All right.
So
So-
we have S5, P9, S2, and P1 are all should be dealt with the groundhog damage. Yes,
Yes,
I got that right. So then P4 with the vegetation and the slack house for to prevent any future water damage. So those items.
right.
I don't want to be nitpicky. Are we talking, is it the woodchuck issue or you said groundhog? Is it, I know that could be the same, there could be both in there, but does it matter?
I think
Like-
they're the same critter we're talking
Oh,
about.
are they?
That's-
I've learned something. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know there may be some difference between the two, but whatever.
No, there
Yeah.
isn't. They're just different names for the same beast.
Okay, same
You
beast.
got it. Same problem.
Okay,
They
and
both
then,
dig holes in
so,
dirt.
so the motion no longer includes the demolition.
No,
Okay, so with those three items, do we want to have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the township that immediate, in quotes, stabilization efforts be undertaken in those properties after assessment by the township and the animal control agent. I mean, we're basically saying.
We're not determining tactics. We're just saying they,
Yeah, we're not determining tactics. We're asking them.
You could say by the appropriate township professionals.
Thank
Appropriate
you.
township staff.
Thank you.
okay. So the motion is to recommend to the Board of Supervisors immediate, quote, quote, stabilization be taken on those properties after assessment by the appropriate township professionals. Yes? Does Dennis I'll second.
Before you vote.
All in favor?
Hold on.
Wait a minute.
Before,
Yes, Fred.
are you going to make a list of the properties for the board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. All in favor of that motion as compiled by Beth, say aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
That could you just send me that so that we can
I certainly will.
get on the agenda.
Yes.
okay. I love it because the committee has moved this forward. Here was the last slide, which was next step to create, in macro sense, create subcommittees. The second one, determine preliminary building priorities for immediate stabilization. Done. Just did that. On the create subcommittees, what's the sense of this committee? Do we want to make subcommittees at least on the first two or the first one? What's the consensus here of this group?
I'll do potential uses.
We'll do potential uses. A volunteer. Always appreciate it. Do we have a volunteer on the historical significance?
I'll do that.
All right, James, thank you.
Thank you, James.
And based on the prior discussion, I think that's as deep into this as we should go at this juncture, rather than starting on the partnering and funding and financial analysis, right?
Yes. Who did you say was coming next time?
Okay, Kurt told me he has lined up for our meeting on September 28th. Hang on, it is Jeff Marshall. Jeff Marshall has just retired as the president of the Heritage Conservatory. He's been the president for approximately the last 10 years. That's the organization that did the 2007 strategic plan. He is familiar with these properties. He's also currently the board president of the Pennsylvania Land Trust, and he's a past president of the Historic Barn and Farm Foundation of Pennsylvania. So we've invited Jeff to talk to the committee, to present to the committee. And prior to the meeting, I will dialogue with him and kind of be sure he knows where we are in our formation and what we're charged to do, and help give him that kind of background as he comes in to talk to us. So I think he'll be a good source of information and resource and ideas, and let's see where it goes. So I really appreciate Kurt rounding him up and getting on his calendar for that date at 7:30 on the 28th.
And could, just so we're all keyed in and up to speed, when Vet sends that or finalizes that, would you share it with all of us?
I think I'll send it to all of you first.
Okay.
Yeah. At this juncture, I think I would make a motion that James take the position of chair of historical significance subcommittee, or James, you name it, whatever you wish. That we form a subcommittee and that James take the leadership role on establishing historical significance. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations, James. And a similar fashion, I'll nominate Beth, the chair of the subcommittee on potential uses. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
All right, okay. Very good. We have two subcommittees. And I think a good practice would be in each agenda, we'll ask for kind of a report from each subcommittee, and that'll be a standing agenda item in future meetings. So, does that work?
Yes. Dennis, I
Yes.
just want to say thank you for putting together this process for us. I think it'll work really well. And I know you put a lot of thought into it and it shows. I greatly appreciate you giving it some structure.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yes.
You're welcome.
very
And-
good
and-
job.
Thank you, and thank
Thank
you
you very
thank
much.
you for building it and making it out. You know, I mean, it has to work. I'm gonna
It'll work.
stop sharing. Okay. At this point, I would ask John. John, are there any public comments?
No public comment.
Thank you. The next agenda item is the building fact sheets. I hope you've all had a chance to look at those that Excel sheet I sent out trying to summarize these buildings.
Excuse me, Dennis, I have to leave the meeting, so if there's anything that you need me to send to the board, just send me an email. Thank you. Dennis, thanks for that great presentation. Hope to see you soon, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Fred.
Fred.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Are we putting that file on the Google? Like, this is a dumb question. The Google, are we using that folder? Or are we gonna put the files, everything's gonna be on there,
Ooh,
or
there's a
just
good
put the
question.
contract gave to us?
No, I mean, that's my understanding that that's what we should do. I'll tell you that I am horrible with that.
Well, I was thinking I was horrible because I can't find stuff, so I'm thinking maybe
I
it's
have
just my
trouble
answer.
accessing. I have trouble accessing it. I have trouble putting anything on. I'm comfortable with email, but if somebody else wants to put things into Google, God bless.
Let's email it for now and leave it to Katie to put into the folder.
Okay, that's why I just wondered the process, but I meant if
Yeah.
we're all filling stuff
Yeah.
out, that's when it
No, I
gets
know,
tricky
I know.
when you got to email. Like just sending it out, that's super helpful because then I have it on my email, it's
Yeah.
easy. But just if we're all gonna go into the same doc, I didn't know if we wanted it somewhere local, but,
I
or
mean,
central.
First of all, I mean, is that spreadsheet helpful? Is that something we want to do? It's an idea. I just,
Yeah, I mean, do you want to discuss it or,
yeah.
okay, yeah, okay.
I mean, I created some fields and, just tried to, take a cut at it. If you think it's productive, we should make an attempt to populate it, right?
Mhm.
So I'm all game for how we divide and conquer on doing that.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
which bill? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Which ones did you do already?
I just took a fast cut at, let's see, what was it?
I think it was the well house.
What was it, James?
Well house, P1.
Okay. The well house, right. That was simple. Anybody want to volunteer on taking on a couple buildings and we can populate that thing?
Sure.
Sure, I'll do Janny and the pack house.
Okay.
Oh, here, it's along the bottom, sorry.
Okay, thanks, Bet.
How'd you get the dimensions? Is that just an estimate?
That was based on my estimate, my memory. I mean,
Okay.
as we can update these things and refine them as we need to, but just to try to scale it, you know. Sometimes we have that, sometimes we won't. Fred, what are you interested in taking a crack at?
Well,
I could do the Slack House. And if there's any other properties that people don't want to check, I can do that as
yeah,
well.
why don't-
Do we have that? Do we have the Makefield one on here?
Which one?
The Highlands? Is that
That's
on
the
here?
Slack House. That's what Fred just volunteered.
Oh, I didn't realize you were called. Sorry, I gotta look at my sheet.
no,
Oh, I see. I see. I just refer to it as Make the Highlands. Sorry.
no,
Yeah, I don't
didn't.
want that building.
I'm sorry. Who volunteered for the Slack House?
Fred.
No, it wasn't
No,
me.
I did.
It was James.
Oh, it's James?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought it was.
Are you
Oh, I
able
thought it was
to
Fred.
to
Good
see
thing we
me?
clarified that.
Okay.
So do we want assessments on the two that we've said that, do we
No.
still want to do the assessment even on the ones we're saying to demolish, or do we not even want to bother?
Why waste the time? It's
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Make it, be due diligence if anything, right?
we don't need that. So I got P2 and P8. I got Slack. I guess I already did. I did the well house P1. I'll fill in whatever the rest of you don't want to do.
I'm happy to do whatever building. I don't have a preference, so I can just wait to take whatever the heck's left. If that
Okay.
works.
You want S1 and S2?
This one, let me look at my map, Dennis. Hold on. Yes, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
I could do the two barns, I guess, and
Okay.
that's S9 and S5, I'm sorry, and P9.
Okay. Those are biggies.
And
Question for the group.
what else?
What do we think about, whoops, listen. I'm trying to say, the artist house, what do we call it? The caretaker house. What reactions on that house? I mean, it's fully functional, right?
Yep.
Which letter is that?
It's
That's P3?
P3.
Okay.
Do we need to kind of do that? Or,
Well, what's the lease terms? Is it like,
yeah,
do we know that?
do you know, Beth?
I don't know what her lease terms are now.
I just mean if the lease could be up in March and then we don't have a use for it anymore, right? So
I don't think she's
potentially-
going anywhere.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll ask her next time I see her.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I see the caretaker house and the Janney house as, you know, fully occupied and utilized today. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, we can't keep them in our scope, but they're not problems, right? I mean, I don't see a lot of gain from this committee in digging overly deep in that, other than putting together the whole package and describing it, right? I mean, Beth, what do you?
I'm just, the third floor. I just want the floors done.
Well, yeah.
And the
I know
dormers
there's-
fixed.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, I
good.
know there's stuff to be done, but it's not the wrestling match that, the barns.
No, it's
and-
not an immediate stabilization. It's not water damage coming in the roof. It's not anything like that. So
So let's.
That's really, don't you have an agreement with the township on how repairs are handled for the rent, for the lease? Or no?
Well, I wouldn't say it's actually in the lease, but we have a lease and they're our landlord through 2026. So with a 5-year extension, so 31. So
Okay.
we're there.
I just meant, do we have to outline any repairs for that building? Like, wouldn't
Not
that be covered
particularly.
under the tenant lease, however, whatever's negotiated? Because I know that they mentioned that they do pay back some or reduce the rent or just all, I felt like, is any of that in our purview? Yeah, probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, it might be a capital expense to replace the floorboards. That's about it.
Yeah,
And the dormers, but that's about it. But that's all part of public works. So if we put that into the budget for public works, Greg will take care of us.
Yeah, I guess thank you for saying what I meant. I was kind of like, I don't know if we would be giving, recommendations for that stuff.
There were some recommended repairs on for both of those buildings. Right?
Which
Yeah,
building?
it was the dormers on the Janney house. The wood dormers need to be looked at and or replaced. And they just did the window sills and the shutters, and I don't know, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I see those two houses, the Janney house and the caretaker house. They come into the fold when we're doing the financial analysis of how much needs to be spent and the list of projects and that kind of thing. But the big ticket of what's the potential new use, we don't have that question for those two.
No.
Now the significance of the building, the historical significance and the role that it might play in terms of supporting that whole farmstead, that's still important. But they don't have the same challenges, I guess, as the rest. In terms of the spreadsheet, nobody's taken these outbuildings on Patterson, the P6, P5, and P7. I can take a cut at those. Beth, could you do, or maybe we don't even need to do P3, the caretaker house?
I could write it up. Sure.
You know that better than.
Sure.
So, and then Patterson is done, I think. James is doing the Slack house.
Sarah has S1 and 2. Fred has the 2 barns, S5 and P9.
Right.
I can do the rest of the S properties.
Yeah.
Who said that?
James.
Thank you. And the rest, I got S1, 2.
Okay. Thank you, James.
You want to do 4? Are we doing 3 and 4 because they're low on the priority list for end use, or what?
I think we said we do. I don't know.
It may not be worth the effort, James. It's up to you if you want to take a crack, but I don't see profit in it.
I'm sorry, what you're saying, P3 and P4?
S3 and
S3,
Oh, got
4,
it.
and I don't know, 6. Do we even want to bother with 6?
well, we got to
We'll
have
do the whole inventory.
Yeah, do the whole inventory. Yeah.
I
Okay,
don't know all the building slang. What is 6? Which one is that?
that's
That's
the new garage in the back.
Oh, the one I keep not counting. Okay.
Right.
right. Okay.
That one.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So Dennis, I know the spreadsheet is somewhere in your emails. It's somewhere is it in the Google Drive or where is it?
I haven't put it there.
Okay, can you send it out again?
I'll send it again. And who wants to enter it into the Google Drive? Anybody?
I will. I
Okay.
can do that.
And then if others make their edits to the one in Google, we're all changing the same file and not
Right.
multiple versions. Okay.
Well, someone doesn't need to combine all the worksheets. They're just all there.
They're all there.
Right,
Just
right.
play with your own.
Right. Don't touch anybody else's worksheet.
As anybody else.
Dennis, did you say, what about P4 and P5? Did anybody take those, or do you? If not,
Those are mine. I'll take them.
Oh. Oh,
P4 and P5.
oh, okay. P4
Oh,
and
no,
P-
Dennis, you have P5.
I have P5, 6, and
You have 5, 6, and 7, Dennis.
We should see what we're signed up for, Becky.
I'm writing this down. It's getting, I've got a lot of crossouts. Okay, so, but I'll do P4. That's my garage, so I'll do that.
You use it now. Right?
I do.
Well, P8, did, everybody's got P8, pack house.
P8. I don't have a
Yeah,
P8. No,
that's-
pack house. I have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you have that?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm laying claim to that so many ways.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on the fact sheets?
No, is there a deadline?
Or,
Tomorrow? Is that what you said, Fred?
I'm going out
Not
of
going to happen
town.
tomorrow.
I'm
I mean,
going
if
out
we
of
want to
town
try
on
to
the
drive
15th.
one, but when do we want to review all of the spreadsheets in totality? So then I guess we can
For the
back
next
into
meeting.
it.
Next meeting.
28?
Yeah.
And the other thing we need to talk about is we will need some executive sessions, which are simply working sessions of this committee that are not, you know, public with the liaisons and everything, where we're just kind of rolling up shirt sleeves on some things to discuss. And that seems like a better place to read the fact sheet than in the public Zoom meeting. That gets
Okay.
kind of tedious.
Yeah.
Then
So you're saying,
we have to agree
just-
that there's a meeting in between now and the public meeting on the 28th.
There really can't be, at least that includes me, because I'm leaving on the 15th of September and I'm not back to the 24th or 5th, and then our meeting's on the 28th, a public meeting. I'm kind of jammed up this month, so we can have it in early October. You know, you want to look at calendars and see if we can't come up with a date in October for an executive session.
I'd recommend that you just run that by Fred and James first.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can. I mean, I'm on farmland preservation. We do that a few times a year. We just have an executive session. I'll let them know. I guess they're welcome to join. But it's not public.
I think it'll be tedious as we're going through, what is it,
Yeah.
like 12 Excel spreadsheets to go through stuff. I think if we go through it all and then at the next public, you know, we go through it all and then it's in a summary form.
I would suggest if when we get it complete, just everybody review all of them, and then we can have a working session to just kind of highlight the differences or areas of question mark, rather than kind of go through each one methodically. If everyone's
So next session on the 28th, we have the guest speaker. And then I show that we have another meeting on October 13th. Is that correct? Wednesday, the 13th.
Yeah, so we want it between the 28th and the 13th is when we
That's
want
what
to
I'm
be.
saying. So the week of the
Yeah.
4th.
right. So the week of the 4th. In the evening always. That week, I could do Monday, Tuesday, or Friday. With Friday not preferred, but
I can do Tuesday.
What week are we talking?
Week of October 4th, Tuesday the 5th.
What were the other days? Tuesdays is horrible for me.
Monday the 4th, Tuesday the 5th.
yeah, Monday the 4th, Tuesday the 5th, Friday the 8th. I have commitments those other evenings, Wednesday and Thursday.
if we do the 8th, I recommend doing it at a bar. No, wait a minute.
Yes.
A food establishment.
A food establishment. There you go.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm Tuesdays is just no, it's just a hot mess for me. But I mean, I could probably get coverage for it if I had to. But and I have another night meeting as well. I mean, Friday's not optimal.
If
but
Monday does
I can
Monday
make it
work
work.
better for you, Sarah?
Monday's fine too. I could do Monday or Friday. I could swing. If Tuesday is the only day that works for everyone else, I'll just try to get coverage.
No, I can do Monday too.
Okay. James, how about you?
I think Monday would be better. I don't really know my schedule exactly that week yet, but I think it's gonna probably be pretty hectic. But I think Monday is the best chance of working for me.
Fred,
Okay.
does Monday work?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm open at any day there.
Okay. So Monday, the 4th, 6:30, 7:30?
7 o'clock works for me. That's fine. Is this Zoom still?
Are we doing that? Yeah, are we doing it live or Zoom?
I'm comfortable going live if we want to, meet in the township building or something, or some other place.
Is there somewhere we could project? Like, is there somewhere where if we met, we could throw it up on the screen and then we're all looking at the same thing together? Is there
I have a nice art center that has a nice TV.
an art center?
I know this art center that, we could do that.
I just feel like for facilitating the discussion, it might be.
What's
No,
the
no, you're-
protocol though? I have to tell the township we're going to be meeting in private or what?
I'll let them know.
All right.
I'll say we're having an executive working session. on the-
Okay.
And let them, let them figure it out after that. Okay. So Monday, the 4th, I heard 7 o'clock. Does that work with everybody? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, Bet, as our secretary, do you have a particular list of action items that we need to follow up on? I mean, we have the motions and a resolution.
I have the motions and I am going to, where is it? I am going to write up that motion with the list of the properties that we talked about and
Okay.
some thoughts that we included, like the rebar and that kind of stuff. And I'll send that out to all of you within the next few hours, probably. So if that's all correct, then just let me know. And then I'll share it with Fred ahead of the meeting
Okay.
next week.
Okay, thank you. And,
And then we all have, as a follow-up, I'll also send out the list of who has agreed to what on the spreadsheets.
okay.
Dennis, if you'll send me that spreadsheet one more time, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And then I will transfer it to Google Docs and give you all the links.
Thank you.
Next meeting is the 9th, September 28th at 7:30.
Mhm.
It's virtual.
Virtual, right. Is there any other business for the committee? Any committee member have anything else they want to bring up at this time? Hearing none. John, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you.
Mystery man.
Okay. If there's no other business, I would make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, thank you very much. I thought we got a lot done.
Great job, Dennis.